All right, I think we will start, and he should join before we call on him. So, with everyone's permission, welcome everyone to this online event organized by the Institute for Policy Reforms, which is one more episode in our series of discussion on policy issues of critical importance to the country. Today, we will discuss digitization of payments in Pakistan, in this meeting titled Accelerating Economic Growth, Digitizing Payments for Fast and Secure Transactions. My name is Ashraf Hayat. I'm Executive Director here. A deep thanks to all for joining, and especially the speakers, Dr. Raza Bakar, Governor State Bank, Mr. Mohammad Aurangzeb, President Habib Bank Limited, Dr. Mohammad Sohail Rajput, Special Secretary Commerce, Irfan Wahab Khan Sahab, CEO Telenor, Mr. Ehsan Zia, Managing Director, Daraz Pakistan, and Mr. Mick Wu, Theopay Pakistan. He's joining us from Shanghai. You honor us with your time, gentlemen. We start with a short recitation from the Holy Quran. Mr. Irtiqa Zaidi is one of the participants, and I've requested him to recite a selection. Zaidi Sahab.
Assalamu alaikum. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. Ma aghna anhu malahu wa ma kasab. Sayasla naran zata lahabin amratuhu amma latal hatab. Fi jidiha hablum min masad. Sadaqallahul Azim.
Shukriya Zaidi Sahab. Once again, welcome. The subject of today's discussion is one that opens up a host of possibilities for economic revival in Pakistan. Digitization of payments could be the stimulus that the Pakistan economy needs to transit out of years of moderate or uneven growth. We will begin with introductory comments from Mr. Humayun Akhtar Khan. Humayun Saab has been in public service for over 30 years. At various times, he was member National Assembly and in cabinet positions as Commerce Minister and Chairman BOI. Among his many interests, Mr. Khan is also CEO and chairperson of this institute and a source of inspiration for those who work here. In the context of today's discussion, it is apt to say that his political career is marked with an express desire of making public policy and institutions work for all Pakistanis. And this institute and its activities are one reflection of that calling. I request Humayun Saab for welcome comments and for introducing today's topic. Humayun Saab.
Thank you, Ashraf, and welcome everyone to this event on digitization of payments for economic growth. I would like to thank the speakers, especially Governor State Bank, Dr. Raza Bakar, for sparing their time to speak at this panel discussion. Our panelists are all leaders in their fields. I know that your time is valuable and we truly appreciate your presence. As a largely cash-based economy, Pakistan has much catching up to do with other emerging economies in making the shift to digital payment systems and to realize the many benefits of efficiency, growth, and inclusion that it inherently brings. In recent months, the State Bank has taken some commendable steps to fill much needed regulatory and policy gaps by addressing issues that have stayed unattended for many years. State Bank's timing was right. Already a young and dynamic private sector of fintech and other service providers have incrementally laid the foundation for digitization of payments in Pakistan. State Bank support would help scale up these efforts. Also, effective implementation of government's e-commerce policy would allow our firms access to the larger domestic and global marketplace. This is especially useful for the smaller firms that do not have the resources to reach beyond their immediate surroundings. I am encouraged that the combined efforts of all stakeholders will help the country make meaningful progress towards digitalization of payments. This will stimulate economic growth and development in Pakistan. To lend perspective, I will highlight some of the steps taken by the State Bank for rapid digitalization of the economy. Through its circular titled Improving Payment Card Acceptance Infrastructure in Pakistan, the State Bank has given a major fillip to digitalization of payments. It has done so by rationalizing merchant discount rates and their distribution through the supply chain. This circular also puts a cap on interchange reimbursement fee. I think it will be a major step in expediting the acquiring business in Pakistan. State Bank's Asan mobile account scheme, along with the third-party interoperability network providers, will go a long way to improve interoperability in the country. Digitization will get a further boost if we include alternate delivery channels, such as EMIs, in the EMA scheme. Linking them with the interoperability networks would very definitely help digitization in Pakistan. Perhaps the State Bank is planning to do so already. In fact, I recommend that electronic money institutions should become an alternate remittance channel for cross-border payments, for e-commerce platforms, and to capture inflow of workers' remittances coming into Pakistan. I think with the FATF environment internationally, I am a big believer that FATF will be a driver for digitization, not only in Pakistan, but the rest of the world too. Looking beyond policy and regulatory support, the private sector may consider pooling their efforts through open loop infrastructure sharing among them. This would combine the strength of the private sector that at present is operating in isolation. Our goal should be to enhance the use of digital channels to add efficiency and lower cost of transactions. The drivers of economic growth in Pakistan have not changed in decades. Economic growth historically has come from low value added manufacturing, agriculture goods, and services. By building efficiency, digitization will lend much needed stimulus to economic activity. It will not just reduce the time and cost of transactions, it will enable firms and individuals to access new financial services. An economy is the sum total of all transactions. And with digitization, we hope their volume, speed, and security will grow. Our institute decided to organize this discussion because of the importance of this subject to the economy. I am thankful to all the speakers who have made themselves available, and I look forward to a meaningful discussion this afternoon. I guess it's evening in China. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was a very informed and a very good overview of today's topic. Those few minutes packed a whole agenda with a clear idea of the possibilities before us. It's now my special pleasure to welcome Governor State Bank of Pakistan, Dr. Raza Bakar. In the brief period that he has been with the central bank, about a year and a half, Dr. Bakar has taken major steps to stabilize and then revive the country's economy. In particular, the State Bank was quick to respond to the economic fallout from the pandemic. By ensuring supply of liquidity, it created special schemes for firms to stay liquid and avoid large-scale job losses. All this without compromising the stabilization goal. After the challenging period of stabilization, the bank is now focused on reviving industry through special lending facilities, especially a more liberal LTTF and introduction of TERF, the Temporary Emergency Refinance Facility. Dr. Barker has a distinguished career with IMF. He studied economics at Harvard, earned a doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley, and we are fortunate that he's with us today. The virtual floor is yours, sir.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Ashraf Saab, for that introduction. And it's very good to see many friends on this event today. Humayun Saab, it's a great pleasure to see you again. Let me also welcome the other distinguished speakers on this panel. Aurangzeb Saab, President of HBL as well as Chairman of PBA. Suhail Rajput Saab, Irfan Wahab Saab, Ehsan Saya Saab, and Mr. Vicky Wu. So it's a great pleasure to be with all of you today and to talk a little bit about the work that the State Bank is doing in general, but particularly in the context of promoting digitization of our financial system. Let me say a couple of overall words and then get into a little bit of specifics, what we have been doing. As you may know, I have been in this role since May of 2019. It's about a year and a half. And initially, the State Bank, at least since I've been here, was very preoccupied with the goal of restoring macroeconomic stability in the country, because situation that existed back then in 2018, leading into 2019, was one where the sustainability of our external position was being threatened. So our immediate focus at that time was on trying to restore stability and give confidence to our investors. And roughly beginning from about the summer of 2019, for about the next few months, that's where we focused our energies. And as we began to see that confidence was beginning to return, and we measured that by various indicators such as our inflows into the balance of payments. As you saw, the rupee back then was strengthening as well, from somewhere around 163, came all the way down to about 154 at one stage. As we began to saw that stabilization is being restored, concurrently we began to devote more attention also to many other structural areas of reform in the financial system. And one of them is promoting the agenda on digitization. For this purpose, we invited the President of the World Bank to the State Bank, and we launched our national payment strategy, which had been done in collaboration with the World Bank. And that national payment strategy laid out the roadmap and the architecture that we have for taking forward our agenda on digital financial services and payments. That strategy is available on our website, and I would really encourage everybody to take a look at it, because that lays out the vision of where the State Bank is headed. Now, in addition, I myself began to start chairing meetings of stakeholders, both in the private sector and the public sector, to advance this agenda on national payments and digitization. And we had a few of these meetings in those last few months of 2019, taking into early 2020. Now, then we had to deal with all the challenges brought forward by COVID, and we had to, for some time, give that our primary attention. Now that country, mashallah, has come out from COVID quite well, and the economic indicators are on the way to recovery, on our part, you will again see picking up from where we left off and resuming that agenda on advancing the work on digital financial services. I do also want to particularly make sure that everybody also knows that this agenda on digitization, as well as the related agenda on financial inclusion, which has a lot of synergy between it, is being headed by our Deputy Governor, Seema Kamil Saiba, who we are fortunate and very happy has recently joined the State Bank after a very, very successful career in the private banking industry, most recently as a president and CEO of UBL Bank, but also having served in many other distinguished banks in Pakistan, HBL, others, and so forth. So what we did was that we have combined in the State Bank the work on digital financial services as well as financial inclusion. And all of this is being headed by our Deputy Governor, Seema Kamil Saiba. And I will be asking her also to talk very briefly on some of the specifics also where we are taking this work forward. Now, what are some of the key initiatives that the State Bank has taken in the area of promoting digital payments? And I'll just very, very quickly mention some. I won't have time to go into detail, but they are available in the National Payment Strategy document that we launched together with the President of the World Bank as well. Now, first are things in the area of infrastructure development. And as you know, we operate the real-time gross settlement system, which processes right now currently on average 1.5 trillion rupee transactions per day. A recent global trend is implementation of instant retail payments, and the SBP is introducing an instant faster payment system that will not only enable immediate transfer of funds at retail level, but also facilitate smaller fintechs by giving them access to digital payments. Now, this we are in the process of this system called a micropayments gateway, and I'll ask DG Saiba when she speaks to tell you a little bit more about when you should see the first use case of this. Second, in the context of infrastructure development, we have enabled digitization of government collections and payments, which includes digitization of payments of custom duty collection of FBR and provisional revenue authorities using alternative delivery channels for government salaries, pensions, and government collections. Now, since the launch of this, more than 11 million transactions worth about 1.3 trillion rupees have been collected using these digital channels. And this is a little over 1 year that we have introduced this channel. Now, another area where we have been doing work is in policy and regulations. Realizing the emerging and critical role of non-banks in digitization and payments, we issued rules for payment system operators and service providers in 2014. And these rules have helped in establishment and proliferation of several key digital payment channels and instruments, such as the interbank fund transfer, the digital utility bill payment facility, fee and other payments through one bill, Pakistan's own domestic credit card called PayPack. And to date, we have given in principle approval to 11 PSOs/PSPs, of which 4 have been fully authorized for offering commercial services and 3 are in pilot stage. Other areas under policy and regulations that we have done, in 2019, we issued the regulations for electronic money institutions that, with the goal of promoting digitization and providing innovative solutions for payments in the country. Since the initiation of the licensing process, we have received exciting response from a variety of service providers who intend to offer innovative, user-friendly, and cost-effective, low-value digital payment products in the country. And we have to date issued in principle approvals to 7 EMIs, of which 4 are already in a pilot stage. To enable small merchants and facilitate low-cost payment, we introduced regulations for digital onboarding of merchants and standardization of QR codes in Pakistan. And these regulations facilitated onboarding of small retail merchants and enabled them to accept payments digitally and providing new payment options to consumers. As you may be aware, we have also worked with banks to offer remote and digital account opening to overseas Pakistanis. This is a program called Roshan Digital Accounts. I am very happy to share that this program has been received very well by the overseas Pakistanis, and on average, about 700 accounts are being opened a day, and on the weekends, these numbers go up to well above 1,000. And it's an area that we are working with the partner banks that we think is going to bring a lot of digitization. And some of the digitization that we've done here, including remote and presence-less account opening, are areas that we are considering for normal bank account opening in Pakistan as well. Now, a related area where we have done work is on the security of digital payments, because we realize the inherent risks in digital payments, and we need to work to strengthen the oversight frameworks. And we have issued various guidelines such as the Enterprise Technology Governance and Risk Management, Payment Systems Designation, Security of Internet Banking, and Card-Based Transactions Guidelines for prevention against cyber attacks. We have adopted an open door policy for fintechs innovators by facilitating and encouraging a dialogue and discussions. And we are working on development of fintechs facilitation mechanism that would enable small fintechs to work with SPP in assessing the feasibility of their ideas in a controlled environment, while at the same time giving SPP an opportunity to identify potential risks. Now, I want to just close by talking a little bit about some of the initiatives that we undertook in the context of COVID that actually facilitated digitization. Now, in order to facilitate transactions through digital means, we waived all transaction fees charged by regulated financial institutions against all the fund transfers through online channels. And this has resulted in uptake of digital transactions, and they have risen from about 190,000 a day in March 2020. They rose to more than 700,000 a day in October 2020. So this is a several-fold increase that took place in the number of digital transactions per day. Second, we instructed all regulated financial institutions to exercise due diligence and implement stronger and robust cybersecurity measures to counter cyber risks associated with the global disruption. Third, we introduced direct check deposit facility, which has simplified the whole process of clearing of checks. In this facility, the customer, instead of going to their drawee or account maintaining branch, can present a crossed check to any branch of the paying bank in order to have immediate transfer of funds to their accounts. Now, these were some of the areas that we had undertaken, recent work in, and there are many areas in which we are working. I mentioned the micropayments gateway already. That is, number one. Number two is we will continue to work with new fintechs and banks to enable them to offer innovative products. Number three, we are working on the establishment of an innovation office that will strive for digital innovation across different areas of the financial sector, like payment services and market infrastructure, transaction and other data for credit appraisals, lending and capital raising, and investment management. Fourth, like the Innovation Office, we are seeking to establish a form of a fintech facilitation network where new fintechs will be able to approach the State Bank for seeking guidance on their proposals and innovative ideas. Finally, we are going to be conducting a review of the legal, regulatory, and oversight framework to bring it at par with the international standards as well as best practices, and to continue to work towards improving the safety and security of digital payments. Now, these are some of the things that I just wanted to bring to your attention. I also want to very quickly ask our Deputy Governor, Seema Sahiba, to say a few words on how she sees taking this agenda forward. Seema Sahiba.
Naveel, unmute kar dein, Seema Kamil.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, and I'm very happy to be here. Ashraf Hayat Saab, Humayun Khan Saab, and Dr. Bakar, thank you for your introduction and comments. I'd just like to very quickly, because I know there are a number of speakers, just talk a little bit about the future and how we see the role of the speakers here and the community at large. Because one of the most exciting things I think we are looking towards is the innovation office that we plan to build. And a very important part of that will obviously be working with new fintechs, working with the existing players, whether they are the banks, the microfinance banks, the telcos, and the whole range of the new and exciting young people that are coming towards us and who have ideas and need assistance to make those ideas into reality. So what we will be doing as part of the innovation office that Governor Saab talked about is that we will try and have forums where we, similar to what you've done, Humayun Khan Saab, but also to broaden it to have some very open dialogue and then go into what are called regulatory sandboxes so that we can begin to experiment in a controlled way, because as we all know, security and being able to move forward in a very secure as well as innovative way is a challenge in itself. So I just wanted to add that we need all your support of all those present here, and we are very open to meeting with you and organizing sessions where we can listen and learn as well as give our input. Governor Saab talked about the micropayment gateway. It will hopefully launch its first use case at the end of the year, which will start to have to work on bulk payments. The first one that we're working is dividend payments from the Central Depository Commission. And then we will start to move towards salaries, pensions, and even other bulk payments that the government makes to persons. So that is what I wanted to say, and I would like to, with the governor, assure you of our support as we move forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Governor, for a very complete and very informed description of State Bank's strategy and including the overall macro picture, but also Deputy Governor Sabha. Thank you, and I'm sure many people will take up on your offer. I'll move on to the next speaker. I now invite Mr. Mohammad Aurangzeb, one of the country's eminent bankers with over 30 years of diverse banking experience internationally and in Pakistan. Mr. Aurangzeb, of course, is President Habib Bank Limited. Before joining Habib Bank, Mr. Aurangzeb was CEO Global Corporate Banking with JP Morgan. He's also worked with Royal Bank of Scotland and ABN AMRO. In addition to his responsibilities at Habib Bank, he's Vice Chair, Pakistan Business Council and Chairman, Pakistan Banks Association. Aurangzeb Saab studied business at the prestigious Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. Thank you for being with us, Aurangzeb Saab. You have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Ashraf Saab, Humayun Saab. Very kind of you to have invited me to such august company of speakers. While 2020 will always be remembered as a year of the ultimate black swan, but this is also the year where digital essentially became hygiene and helped accelerate the journeys that we have been talking about previously as well. Although I always now, say this in various forums that, someone said it very, very wisely that there are decades where nothing happens and there are weeks in which decades happen. And this is exactly what has happened in terms of client readiness, client acceptability, and their demands for faster, efficient, and cheaper payments. So banks are already stepping up in a big way, thanks to the enabling environment that Governor Barker and his team have provided, and to play this their due role in this space. Now, if I look at the HBL, as Governor Saab mentioned, our own transaction volumes, in line with the industry players, went through a step change. And this is on the back of obviously all the investments and the enablement infrastructure that we have put in terms of the POS network, debit and credit card portfolio, which we are the largest mobile digital payments via our mobile app, largest share in processing e-commerce payments. We have the largest share in terms of digital salary payments as well, 10 to 15% market share in QR merchants, and 10 to 15% market share in biometric devices at various agents in the branchless banking space. But previously there was mention of fintechs. So from our perspective, we want to work with fintechs, we want to partner with fintechs, and we now going forward want to invest in fintechs. So it's actually quite interesting that we have brought a senior person on board only today, who is going to lead our venture capital and corporate fund from HBL, very much focused on the fintech space. So from our perspective, we welcome the non-industry players. Jaise Garner Saab have mentioned around the EMIs and PSPs who have entered the payment landscape, because they are just going to be creating more use cases, as we move forward. There's always this discussion that the bank should do more, and I fully agree and subscribe to that we need to step up further. But obviously, there's an overall ecosystem which needs to be brought together. There are producers, distributors, retailers, regulators, government. I mean, if you just look at the retail and some of the numbers around some of these various markets, so we have about 1 million plus retail outlets with about 9 trillion annual turnover. If you look at the agri space, 10 million farmers with estimated crop sale of about 3 to 4 trillion. If you look at pharma, 800 formal sector manufacturing units with annual sales of 450 billion. Now, why is this all important? I mean, obviously, these are all very, very large figures. I think in addition to the point that's been made around government and digitization of all government payments and receipts, and I'm sure we will hear from Sohail Rajput Saab in a little while, all the good work that's been happening in the commerce space and the VBOX space. But, I mentioned some of these figures because digitization of the small ticket retail purchases and digitization of supply chains and their payments around, these various sectors, is going to be equally critical. Now, as we look at the enabling environment, which has been already referred to, some of this is obviously going to come from the central bank, and State Bank has been sort of leading from the front on that side. But it also has to go into the fiscal space. The thing that and the meetings that Governor Barker referred to, which he was chairing, pre-COVID around this whole agenda, actually included all stakeholders, including people from FBR, right? Because all the fiscal incentives that have to come in. And I'll give you one example, because it's not only just at the federal level, it also goes into the provincial level. So we've, the sales tax reduction or exemption from the buyers on making digital payments. And this is our own experience, that as the government of Punjab rolled out a 10% differential on sales tax on cash versus digital payments, especially in restaurants, people now want to pay digitally. So it's also influencing consumer behavior, because we can't just always be talking about the supply side. The demand side has to, kick in as well. So the only last comment, because I'm again mindful that number of very, very eminent speakers are going to come in with their remarks, that we do feel that the payments industry, has to move over a period of time from a closed loop mindset to an interoperability mindset, where payment processing actually becomes a commodity, and competition is on value added proposition and new business services models, which will inevitably come up around these transactions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Augzir Saab. That is a very good and insightful review of how the Abid Bank is approaching this matter and working on it. And good luck with the new fintech operation that you've started from today, perhaps. I just want to let everyone know that this is also being live cast on our Facebook page, the IPR's Facebook page, but also perhaps on Profit Today, the Pakistan Today's business platform. I now welcome to the virtual podium Dr. Mohammad Sohail Khan Rajput, Special Secretary, Ministry of Commerce. Dr. Rajput has extensive and varied experience of the government, His area of focus has been financial management and project development. He holds a Master of Public Administration and Economic Policy Management from Columbia University. Commerce Ministry is government's lead agency for e-commerce, and we hope to hear from Dr. Rajput the ministry's experience of implementing the policy and their future plans. Welcome, Dr. Rajput. Thank you for sparing the time. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Ashraf Khan Sahab, for inviting me to this forum, and thanks to Humayun Akhtar Sahab, the CEO of the Institute for Policy Reforms, and very good afternoon to all the other speakers, Dr. Azhar Bakir, Governor, State Bank, Seema Kamil Sahaba, the Deputy Governor, Mohammad Aurangzeb Sahab, the President of the Habib Bank Limited, Irfan Wahab Sahab, Ehsan Saya Sahab, and Miku. We have heard from the Governor of the State Bank as well as from the Deputy Governor the steps which have been taken in the recent past by the regulators as well as by the government to facilitate the e-payment systems, the digitization, and this whole environment around COVID-19 has facilitated that a lot. So the digitization, the amount of progress that has been made during the last 8 to 10 months have been very encouraging. From Ministry of Commerce, I would like to delve upon the e-commerce policy, which the government has formulated about a year back, and the potential of GDP growth, which has been estimated by implementation of this policy, is $36 billion, and it's estimated to create around 4 million jobs. So the major pillars of this policy is number one, regulation and facilitation. And on regulation and facilitation side, the steps which have been so far taken include the establishment of a dedicated National E-Commerce Council, which has the representation from all the stakeholders. And this e-commerce council is mandated to drive the e-commerce initiative in the country. So that is very much in place, and it has met 3 times already, and a lot of initiatives have been rolled out through this platform. Then we are working on a framework for facilitating the cross-border e-commerce initiatives, and also implementation of trade facilitation agreement and operationalization of national single window. Marketplaces, a code of conduct have to be developed for these marketplaces, rules of business which are made under the Constitution of 1973. At that time, the e-commerce was not in the field. So those have been amended, and the function and the mandate to work for the government on e-commerce has been given to Ministry of Commerce. So that amendment to the rules has already taken place. Another key pillar of the policy, e-commerce policy, is financial inclusion and digitization through payment infrastructure development. Governor State Bank has already given some details of it. So on financial inclusion side, the policies which have been rolled out by the government, such as the Kamyab Jawan program scheme of the government of Pakistan, which focuses on giving the loans to new entrepreneurs, with particular focus on the women entrepreneurs. And the term sheet for that has been recently revised by the government in order to incentivize the private banks to participate with more vigor into that program. So the risk sharing being taken by the government has been substantially increased, and the loans have become softer. So that is one key initiative of the government for ensuring the financial inclusion. Then another key pillar is the SME and youth empowerment through e-commerce. And the target is to identify, train, and enable 50,000 ESMEs of remote areas of country to online marketplaces. That is one of the target which we want to achieve through this policy. And then creation of an e-commerce business facilitation hub, and also the augmentation of the scale and effectiveness of export enhancing e-commerce, because that is the core area where the Ministry of Commerce will like to focus upon. And also the improving access to finance through venture capital, and for provide funding to promote digitization and skill development. Consumer protection is also one of the key pillars of this policy, and through consumer protection, we are introducing certain legislations. Already at least for the Islamabad Capital Territory, a new law to protect the consumer rights have already been enacted, but we are trying to facilitate the provinces also to introduce legislation in this regard. The establishment of e-courts is another initiative which we plan to roll out, so that to ensure that the legal framework is enacted where the facilitation for e-commerce is provided. Another key area where, in order to facilitate the businesses in particular, is the harmonization of taxes. At present, there are 5 jurisdictions in the country which collect the sales tax on services, because it's a devolved tax. So the 5 jurisdictions, in 5 jurisdictions, there are 5 different tax collecting agencies. Through the harmonization of sales tax, we want to introduce a single portal, and to facilitate the business, they can only file only one tax return for all the 5 jurisdictions. At present, each business has to file 5 jurisdictions, and so that becomes cumbersome. So harmonization of provincial sales tax, through which the rates of the sales tax will also be harmonized, as well as the mandate of collection of tax will also be given to single agency. Another pillar is ICT infrastructure and telecom services, in order to enhance the internet penetration across Pakistan, and for effective implementation of telecom policy, which was enrolled in 2015. The e-commerce logistics will also be automated, and that is also a core pillar of this policy. National freights and logistic policy for facilitating the e-commerce is also in pipeline, and that will also be formulated and will be taken to the cabinet for its approval. Another key area is we are working with Ministry of IT to ensure enactment of Data Protection Act. That is also a key piece of legislation which the government plans to undertake. And similarly, we are working on the first cloud policy along with Ministry of Information Technology. So these are the major initiatives which the government, and particular Ministry of Commerce, is coordinating with other government agencies. And we believe that by providing this robust legal and policy framework, we will be achieving the targets which we have set through the e-commerce policy. I will stop here, and thank you very much for the patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Special Secretary Saab. We can see that there's a lot happening there. I invite now Mr. Irfan Wahab Khan, CEO Telenor and Chairman of the Board, Telenor Microfinance Bank. Mr. Khan is one of the leading professionals of the country in the field of information, communications and technology. He too has international experience in several countries, Europe, Middle East and Asia, having worked with T-Mobile, Orange and Ericsson. His degrees are in electronic engineering and mobile communications, and he has pursued management courses with renowned business schools in Europe and in the US. Thank you for joining us, Irfan Saab. I invite you to make your comments.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Ashraf Saab, Humayun Saab, for the invite. Really pleased to be here. I think this platform is a great example of how all the thought leaders are deliberating on a very important topic here. And representing telecom sector, I was just thinking that, 15 years ago when we started this journey in Pakistan after the deregulation, we had many roadblocks. I mean, there were only 5-6 million customers who were using mobile phones. And last decade or so, we have seen a true revolution. Now, we have 80% penetration, 170 million people. You can see in every nook and corner of the country, far-flung rural areas, that mobile telephony is there. And our journey, the next phase of journey is actually to move from a delivery of minutes and megabytes to delivery of moments. And those moments are all around enabling digital services. And those services could be linked to education, entertainment, health, e-commerce, but none of this is possible without including the payments, because that's how you are actually linking the delivery of those services to the consumers. So we are at a very historic junction in our journey, I must say that, because we've seen that huge uptick in telecom services, in technology services, and this is exactly we have started observing now, last couple of years, I would say. And Governor Sahib has also shared some very encouraging numbers. We see that as part of our journey in EasyPaisa, for example, when it comes to the overall users of mobile wallets, digital payments, the transactions which we see every day, and COVID has really accelerated that trend tremendously. Not just related to payments, but overall digital adoption has skyrocketed. And then it's all driven by demand. You think of shutdown when markets were not open, people still need to go and get the recharge. Only in case of Telecom, I mean, we used to have 5 million customers going to those retailers every day to top up. Now, 1/3 of those are doing top up digitally, only in the matter of last 6 months, which is really tremendous. And there's no doubt about the overall potential of bringing everyone from a cash society to a cashless society. A couple of years ago, when I was president for Overseas International Chamber, OICCI, we commissioned a report along with some consultants. At that time, our estimate was the GDP contribution through digitization in the payment space and the financial services space will contribute or can contribute up to $45 billion over the next 5 years, which is quite, when you think of it, is quite mind-boggling. And yet alone, I mean, all the employment opportunities and indirect benefits. And we see this trend now taking off. Just to give another figure, between us, EasyPaisa and Jazz Cash, our customers are converting about 100 billion rupees every month from a physical money to e-money. And that we have seen a tremendous increase there as well. So 100 billion in the context of what Aurangzeb Sahib has shared with us is still very small. We're just scratching the surface, but it's at least is a start, and it's happening today in Pakistan. So that gives us encouragement that this is possible. But we need to really think about from a demand side as well, that how we sort of really build on this trend. And I would like to actually also highlight some of the friction points, which again, as thought leaders and also taking advantage of both Seema and Governor Sahib, I'd like to mention that, for example, when we give incentive for the IBFT in light of COVID, now we feel that those retailers, and we have like 70,000 retailers serving the industry every day, perhaps we need to now think about how we sort of make this more of a pull service rather than a push, and reintroduce some of those charges, because otherwise it will not be sustainable going forward. One of the other roadblocks or challenge we see is that we still have large portion. We all know that more than 70% of people are not banked. Through the digital interventions by the entire ecosystem players, our target is to bring those 75 million people who are non-banked into some sort of a banking solution, and then mobile banking and wallets could be one of the easier ones. And one of the irritants there today is the KYC requirements which are tied to NADRA. Now the world has really moved on. There are equally robust and secure solutions which we can build upon through third-party validation, through telco databases, for having a presence-less sort of KYC for level 0 accounts. So again, something we need to think about, so that we encourage people to get into the system, and then as they move up, we can think of what sort of other measures we can make. But technology is advanced enough, and it's really heartening to see the regulatory sandbox approach, which Seema has mentioned, because this will really help us to build innovative solutions and products. And then also we need to, it's really good to see that all of us needs to come together as partners in the ecosystem to develop that ecosystem. But also fact remains that even today, more than half of these smartphones, or more than half of the cell phones which are coming into the market, either through import or local manufacturing, are still non-internet phones. We must discourage that because of, again, the price barriers, because of high taxes and duties. Smartphones are still out of reach of our masses, a large part of the masses. So we need to think that, not just as a tool for connectivity, but also a tool for financial inclusion and digital inclusion, and see how we should incentivize more and more deployment of handsets. So even today, we have only 40% 4G devices and less than 50% smartphones. So we have a long way to go there. So I think by looking at all those aspects, we can certainly make sure that this journey continues with good momentum. And one thing which we are very sure is that, which other speakers also mentioned, that it has to be an open ecosystem. None of us on our own can make that happen. We all need to help and reach out to each other and enable those elements of the ecosystem, whether it's consumer protection, whether it's enabling the retail, whether it's coming up with a lot of use cases, because this has to be driven by the demand side. And we have seen huge appetite actually of some of the experiments which we have done. I'm still calling them experiments in terms of credit scoring, micro lending, insurance products, which are not typically available for the masses. But now is the time to actually scale them up. And I have no doubts that we will see that, because that's the trend which we've seen in other regional markets. And Telenor is very sort of pleased to be part of that ecosystem, and committed to play our role. I'll just stop here and take questions in the end.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Irfan Saab. That was again another very insightful discussion. And you raised some useful issues that hopefully can push the boundaries and increase the space for this initiative. I now invite Mr. Ahsan Saya, Managing Director, Daraz, Pakistan. Mr. Saya is a former investment banker who now heads Pakistan's largest e-commerce marketplace business. Other than being a platform for e-commerce, Daraz has the goal of making digital payments and financial inclusion accessible to a large number of Pakistanis. To meet the challenge of logistics in Pakistan's e-commerce space, Daraz, under Saya Saab, has built Pakistan's first and largest logistics company, specially designed for e-commerce operations. Mr. Saya has an honors degree in business administration from Western Ontario, Canada. We're happy that he's here to share his rich experience with us. Welcome, Saya Saab. Virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Ashraf Saab. Thank you, Humayun Saab. I'm very humbled to share a stage with Dr. Raza Bakir, Ms. Seema Kamil, Mr. Mohammad Aurangzeb, Mr. Suhail Rajput, Mr. Mick, and Mr. Irfan Wahab, who I would actually specifically like to thank for the encouraging words of how the telecom sector has grown. And my hope is that we can mimic the same sort of growth in the e-commerce industry in Pakistan. So my aim today will be really to give a perspective of digital payments when it relates to e-commerce, and how we can fuel growth within e-commerce with a deeper penetration of digital payments. E-commerce is an industry that has been amongst the fastest to fuel job growth globally. And there are three large challenges that have really hindered the growth of e-commerce in Pakistan. Number one is logistics infrastructure. Number 2 is the customer trust. And finally, number 3 is the digital payments. And I'll dig really into the third challenge today and what are some of the steps we need to take as an ecosystem to improve those. So in any marketplace, there are 2 key stakeholders, and any marketplace like Daraz. 1 is the customers, number 2 is the sellers. So we'll do a little bit of digging into each. So when it comes to customers, the one element that is often overlooked is the hidden cost of handling cash. And I'll give you an example of that. If there's a customer who prepays for an order, so uses digital payment to place an order, there's a 99% chance that that product will be successfully delivered, and that it's very unlikely that the product will be returned. Whereas if it's a cash on delivery, that success rate falls to 84%. This has a downstream impact significantly on sellers, on the logistics companies, and on the ecosystem themselves. With COD, with cash on delivery, it means that it takes a lot longer for the sellers to get their money, which means that they're left without that capital in a country where liquidity is still difficult and cost of debt is still high. For logistics companies, it often means that someone shows up to your house and you're not home, or you didn't, you have a 5,000 rupee note, whereas you bought something for 300 rupees. So you say, kal aa jana. But that kal aa jana has such a downstream impact to all the logistics companies and the e-commerce players that eventually that cost gets multiplied many times over by the time it reaches the customer. What we do at Daraz is we really work very closely with the banks. One of our closest partners is actually HBL. And we work very closely with the banks and wallets to do 2 things. We educate our customers, and we often offer customers discounts so that they're actually able to transact online. The education component is super important because until all the banked customers know that they can pay online, it often doesn't occur to them that they can actually use their cards online. So we spend a lot of time and money and effort educating with the banks. And secondly, like I said, we offer discounts so that customers can actually try digital payments for the first time. And we've noticed that a customer who uses digital payments the first time is often a much stickier customer. And one of the indications of that for us has been that if we look at just September year-over-year growth, our digital payments growth has been over 100% in terms of value. And that's predominantly happened because of the efforts that we have taken with the wallets like EasyPesa and Jazz Cash and our banking partners like HBL. The second issue that customers often face when it comes to digital payments is that today, if we're going to be very honest with ourselves, that digital payments are not nearly as convenient as cash. And if we really dissect that in e-commerce, where that comes down to is the refund process. That unlike other industries in e-commerce, there's often a return leg where a customer says, in order to build a customer trust, that I don't like this product, or this product doesn't fit me well, this is not what I thought the product was, hence I want to return it. And the reason it's very important to offer that is the second challenge I had mentioned, which was to build customer trust. So companies like Daraz and other e-commerce players have to really, really focus on offering a very seamless refund process. When we offer refunds on cards like Visa and MasterCard, it can often take up to 30 to 45 days to get that refund back. Now imagine, in a country where your cost of debt is high, and let's say you buy a fridge for 1 lakh rupees. It's really not, it's not feasible for most people to be stuck with that much money for that many days. What we have done to circumvent that is we've started our own closed loop wallet because we noticed that with that we can offer refunds faster. And that was really the biggest customer pain point, was that they wanted to get their returns faster and refunds faster so they can transact again if they didn't like something. Third issue that we, that I think has been really a sticking point for growth of digital payments within e-commerce and also in the offline world has been that, frankly, cost of payments is still too high for most businesses. If I give you 100 rupees and you pass that 100 rupees on to 7 more people, we're still left with 100 rupees in the end. And I think that element is sometimes, it's not appreciated to its fullest degree. And I'll give you an example that even if we look at the wallets and we look at the amount, the percentage that a customer has to pay when they transact on the wallet, plus the tax component that's attached to it, that for a customer base that's generally on the lower tier, that even the tax amount of 16% is potentially prohibitive and something that they're not willing to go and spend. And in order to really circumvent that, we need to really focus on reducing the transaction cost. And there's 2 components of that. One is obviously that, and one thing that was rightfully mentioned by Irfan Saab as well, is that to offer value that makes for the customer, that makes the value of the digital payment and the cash equal. Because obviously it's very naive for us to think that cash being at a cost of zero is going to mimic digital payments at a cost of zero. That's very difficult for us to do. However, what it is possible to do is to really focus on value-added services like medical insurance that was briefly mentioned by Irfan Saab. In order to do that, I really believe that that there's a lot of infrastructure support that needs to be provided by the government. Today, Aurangzeb Saab also mentioned about the interoperability issue that's there. And I don't want to criticize the banks, but you have banks that all have their own app, their own QR code, whereas really in an ideal universe, you would have one universe in which you could do that. But in order for them to be able to afford to do that from a tech perspective, from a cost perspective, there needs to be an underlying technology layer that really reduces the cost for them. And that infrastructure, the moment we can invest in it from a government standpoint, that allows them, the private entities, to be able to save the cost and pass it on to the customers. And one very clear example of this is obviously the elimination, or in fact, if we say that we made IBFT easier, i.e. cheaper, Dr. Bakr mentioned that the volumes jumped up by 5x. But in order to make it sustainable and for private entities to be able to subsidize that, their costs also need to be subsidized so that they can afford to do it. And we're all in a universe where we're chasing growth very quickly, but that sustainability will also come if we have an underlying technology that allows us to pass those savings on to our customers. And finally, the one point that I think is important on the side of, so when we talked about the customers, the other is the sellers. And I really want to focus just 1 minute on what is the importance of digital payments for sellers. One of the components we see that has restricted growth for sellers in Pakistan is the accessibility of capital. And the advantage of having a digitized seller is that you really know that seller's behavior. If I sell this bottle and if I have 100 of those in stock, and I know that the seller has sold out in 3 days, but his payment cycle is in 15 days, I know that for 12 days that he's actually not able to sell because it's a working capital tie-up. And I know that if I was able to actually fund him for those 12 days, that he actually is able to potentially sell more. And as e-commerce companies, we have a lot of that data, and we have the ability to be able to provide our sellers, to be honest, at rates that should be even more competitive, because we know how much they can buy, we know how much they can sell, and we know what their accessibility to capital is and what it should be. And I think it's the one component in this that's super important for all the microfinance banks as well, is that there's a lot of when money is being made on capital, on debt, and on providing capital, which fuels growth, there's a lot more opportunity to take that profitability and subsidize other portions of the business that allow you to grow with customers. So if today we had a huge universe of sellers that we're able to provide lending to, and we had a good amount of capital that we were able to recover from them, then that profitability that the banks make, that the microfinance banks make, that frankly any of the fintechs are able to make, they can use that amount of profitability to subsidize areas like for example IBFT charges, or other charges that today may not be able to be subsidized at the same rate. So I think those are the two the components for the customer that are very important for us to be able to solve from a private sector as well as the public sector, and particularly from the seller side, it's really focusing on providing the accessibility of capital, and where you really have a rich amount of data for these sellers at a very granular level that can really fuel the growth of digital payments.
Thank you, Hassan Saya Saab. That was another very informed presentation, and like your predecessors, you raised some very pertinent issues that could possibly push the boundaries of this the digital payment ecosystem. Thank you. I now turn to Mr. Mick Wu, who is CEO FioePay Pakistan, currently based in Shanghai. In China, FioePay offers a full range of technology-intensive payment service and solutions for global mobile transactions. As a financially integrated company, FIO Group's component firms provide online payment systems, including cross-border payments and fintech services. with the help of PowerPoint slides. Mr. Wu will draw on these experiences and share his insights as a technology provider for digitalization in Pakistan. He will reflect on the state of digitalization here, which he and his company have studied for over a year. Welcome, Mr. Wu. The virtual floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Humayun. Thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Mick from FuyoPay, and it is my great honor today to share with you our view on fast and reliable digital payment based on our experience in China. FuyoPay is a licensed payment company in China and has been working in the field for more than 10 years. Okay, so it is acknowledged that globally mobile payments is evolving really fast, especially in China. Since the Central Bank of China issued the first batch of third-party payment license in 2011, China's mobile payment scale has reached 40 trillion US dollars by the year 2019, first in the world. Throughout the development of history, payment tools must be the first. From Alibaba, the e-commerce platform, launched Alipay, to WeChat, the social communication tool, launched WeChat Pay. Telecom companies and banks are also promoting their own apps and wallet products. And recently, the central bank has started a trial promotion of the digital currency in Shenzhen, south part of China. With more and more mobile and digital payment tools available, people are more exposed to mobile payment choices than ever before. At this point, Pakistan has witnessed a rapid growth as well. We learned that SBP has issued guiding policies like EMI, AMA, and recently the SECP is looking at the digital asset management measures as well. Banks and telecom companies are launching their own wallet products and expanding their business by combining them with a vast offline agent network. The market of Pakistan is sure to welcome more digital payment developers in the future, and it is critical to the development of digital mobile payment. However, the point I want to make that at the same time, in order to make the development of digital mobile payment faster, business digitalization and payment digitalization need to advance together. The business digitalization will make the ecosystem of digital payment more comfortable and complete. Business digitalization is first reflected on the development of POS machine. No matter how pervasive payment methods are, e-wallets, bank cards, or digital currency, or fingerprints, or Face ID, or even VR and AR devices in the future, when a customer enters a consumption scenario, whatever payment methods he's willing to use should be accepted. At this point, a POS machine that can handle all payment methods becomes particularly important. This is where business digitalization comes in, and it can do more than that. For example, after integrating all the payment methods, smart POS machine can tag each customer's payment methods, payment data, visiting frequency, consumption habits, and provide merchants with an accurate portrait of each customer, which makes marketing more accurate. Or even take one step further, issuing advertisement and coupons on the POS machine and complete the whole process of unified marketing and management. Moreover, the biggest feature of business digitalization is that payment data is stored in the cloud through SaaS system, and it is interconnected as well. All parts of a certain business line are more closely linked than ever before, which makes the whole process more efficient and reliable. For example, in the supply chain industry, different payment status by upstream and downstream side is visualized by digital softwares, and it makes guaranteed payment possible. In this way, the credit of the whole supply chain system is enhanced, and the development of digital payment will become faster, not only among individuals, but entrepreneurs as well. On the other hand, with the rapid development of payment tools and business digitalization, it is particularly important for the central bank to plan for the whole industry. When a large number of players participating in the competition of digital payment, it is inevitable that they will produce many enclosed small systems and a large number of low-cost constructions that cannot be used or interconnected, which definitely will be a waste of social resources. Regulators should establish a public platform to guide limited competitors, open the interface of digital payment, and make pricing rules transparent. For example, in China, the central bank has set up 2 state-owned clearing institutions, UnionPay and NetsUnion. They are responsible for issuing unified payment interfaces to all payment institutions, including Alipay and WeChat. And the pricing of different payment methods is also decided by them. Although this policy comes quite a long time after Alipay and WeChat dominating the market, it is evident that the central bank aims to further accelerate mobile payment by ruling out monopoly and vicious competition. Of course, we want to see the rapid growth of digital payment as well as the reliability of this new thing. From the point of view of payment institutions, of course, their major job or their major energy should be put on improving their hardware strength. They should have the capacity of sound data security management, continuous service delivery, and system stability. Especially in the early stage of digital payment development, under relatively low acceptance of digital payment, once there's a slight risk or problem at the system level, it will cause a major blow to the popularity of digital payment. In China, ensuring the stability of payment institutions has even reached the policy level. The central bank will impose a series of requirements on all licensed payment companies, such as server room facilities, disaster management, and dedicated line establishment, and the regular inspections is required as well. In addition, from the point of view of the merchants, reliability should be seen and touched. Therefore, the decision of the governors on the business sector becomes essential in digitalizing the whole market. In China, the State Council has repeatedly stressed on the orderly development of the new retail business, the acceleration of digitalization for offline sites, and the combination of online and offline sales model. On one hand, these policies will let the merchants literally feel mobile payments and digitalization. On the other hand, because they are officially supported, the reliability of digital payment is further enhanced. Last but not the least, there is another perspective of reliability, and that is the willingness to pay. When taking advantage of the efficiency and transparency brought about by digital payment, the government should also protect or even entice people's willingness to digitalize their payment. Of course, we have learned that in Pakistan, the tax department has made corresponding corresponding policy optimization for this issue. And the customs department of Pakistan will also take corresponding tax concessions for the import of POS machines. This will greatly promote the popularization of digital payment as well as the infrastructure construction of business digitalization. Pakistan with a large population base and high rate of young population is a fertile field for the growth of digital payment. As a good partner and a good friend of China, we are confident that Pakistan's mobile payment industry will flourish in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so you didn't use the slides, which you said you would. Thank you. Those were 6 outstanding presentations. Thank you all speakers. I found them extremely interesting. I now open the discussion for questions. Before I do so, there are a couple of requests. Most of you, of course, are familiar with the Zoom conference system by now. So please click the raise hand icon. A couple of you have already. And if you can't find that icon, it's you go to the participants icon at the bottom, click it, and they will open a page, sort of a panel with the raise hand icon. There are a couple of other requests before I go to the first questioner. We're a little over time, and I do request you to stay short. And also, let me know which speaker do you want, are you addressing this question to? So I'll first go to Dr. Khalid Mahmood.
Thank you so much, Ashraf Hayat. Thank you so much for inviting me to this event. It's a wonderful event. I'm joining from the UK, and especially impressed by the presentation from the speakers here. And I'm quite excited when looking at the young population of Pakistan and the way the mobile payments could help to change I would say, the landscape of the Pakistan's socio-economic things. So my first question here is maybe to Governor State Bank, Mr. Reza Bakir Saab. I just want to ask, because Pakistan has got a huge base agri-food agriculture industry. So if a farmer who's selling his cow or his buffalo, which is over 200,000 rupees, so there is no such mechanism again in terms of, I mean, we've been talking to the Punjab government how we can digitize the livestock markets. So this would be of interest to sort of find a way how farmers could take part in this whole digital markets.
Thank you. I think the Deputy Governor will answer that. Danish Alvi?
I would like to start with saying that the conference has been very educative for me, and I have a small thing to ask to Mr. Reza Bakir. Especially when it comes from this State Bank of Pakistan, the first thing which comes to thought is the monetary policy of the country. And I'm very glad that Mr. Wu also brought up what China is going to do with the yuan. It's going to make it electronic as well. So in light of, and by the way, it's going to be done by the end of 2020, as they said. And this process is going to eliminate many of the problems associated with payments of electronic payment, because electronic payments and electronic cash are related, but they're different concepts yet. So things like financial inclusion, cyber security, and monetary policy itself, and counterterrorism tracking to track the fraudulent payments, etc., etc. All these processes, and as some people mentioned, of gateways, to have a common gateway and clearing houses, etc. All these problems would be solved in one suit, and it's all going to come by the end of 2020. And plus, monetary policy would be right in the hands of the State Bank. So I wanted to know what are the thoughts of Mr. Reza Bakir on this, so that was my question.
Good, right, Danish. We'll go to Abbas J, the name is.
From Grant Thornton. So I have a question on digital, on this, Roshan account, which is currently being offered through 6 banks. So I have a question from a State Bank team. Are they planning to allow fintechs to also tap this space, or to collaborate with banks in some manner, because we think that fintechs could really add some value on it? My second question is also from State Bank or Ministry of Commerce. I don't know who to respond, who can respond to it. Is the question on international payment gateway. There was an approval given to NITB by State Bank recently. So I want to know what is the progress on it, and if State Bank is also considering to allow other players, other fintechs to do the same, to enter in the same international payments gateway space.
Thank you. Mr. Tariq Malik, Mr. Syed Rizvi, and Rashid Bajwa.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum. Tariq Malik here, the former Chief Technology Officer of GHQ. I have a comment and a question from Muhammad Rajput Sahab. The comment is, like, when you're trying to enhance and facilitate the e-commerce in Pakistan, where you need people to trust new e-commerce players, same time you want to trust them, the digitalized payments, you really need to work on the certificate-based, the government certificate-based authority, which actually verifies, validates, that is a trust players where a user can go and. So my question to Mr. Sohail Rajput would be that is there any effort at the government level to support or work on the PKI, national level infrastructure, to support both financial industry and the e-commerce industry? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sayyid Rizvi.
Thank you, Ashraf. Joining from Dubai, it's a great pleasure. It's highly knowledgeable and very relevant seminar.
Question.
And my question, I've got two, in fact, three questions, but the first two is for the Governor State Bank. And that's the role of trust in this whole process. It targets, the whole process targets behavioral change related to sense of insecurity by people. Is the State Bank taking an initiative to educate the masses in coordination with the banks to alleviate this sense of insecurity and affect this behavioral change? And my second question is about cryptocurrency. Will cryptocurrency, has it been given any consideration that cryptocurrency will be acceptable or will be legitimized by the State Bank? And if it does, will it also be form of digitalized transactions? And the third one is for Mr. Irfan. His name was Mr. Irfan,
Yes.
CEO of Telecom. Any progress on induction of 5G technology in Pakistan? Thank you.
Thank you. So the first two for State Bank and the third for Telenor. Right. Mr. Rashid Bajwa, sir.
So thank you very much. Yeah, the question here is that now that we have the e-commerce platforms and we have the digital payments, I think it's very important that the small farmers should be connected. And at the moment, the country, the entire ecosystem for entire digitalization is urban-based. But the real engine of growth remains the rural areas. And if we are able to connect these small farmers, particularly the inputs, because this is where our productivity gets reduced because of low quality inputs. And I think it's high time, and I would request the central bank to have a particular attention towards this issue and try to facilitate that. And if we are able to do that, I can assure you that the country will make a very big leap forward in terms of our agriculture production. Thank you.
Thank you. So those are the questions we have. We can start with State Bank. I understand that the governor had to go. There's an ECC or a cabinet meeting. So Seema Alvisa, the Deputy Governor Saba, and then we'll go to Sohail Rajput. I think there was a question addressed to Telenor. If there is a closing statement by Mr. Aurangzeb, we would want to hear from him, and from Mr. Ehsan Saya, I should have said. Deputy Governor.
Right. Thank you, Atsab. There were a number of questions addressed to the State Bank, and I've made a note of them, and so I hope I can tackle all of them. I don't necessarily have answers, but yes, the points are taken. The first, there was a couple of gentlemen who talked about the livestock market, and yes, we agree that it is almost entirely cash-based at the moment, and that is a barrier. And as a number of others speakers said, that there is a certain convenience in cash, which we as a group here and as an ecosystem have not been able to compete with, and certainly not in the livestock space. What we have experimented, and I'm sure that Aurangzeb Saab was also aware that at HBL we tried on the large cattle market, say at the time of Eid, to be using QR code and so on, but the acceptability still of having cash in your pocket is not there at the moment. But certainly the point is appreciated, and and that is why, frankly, this unit has now been created by the governor that brings in agriculture, all the underserved sectors, which are SME, agriculture, even gender, along with payments, so that we can bring this together. And that is why the innovation box is there, so that we can actually bring these underserved rural areas into the ecosystem for payments. However, to say that they are totally excluded is not entirely right. For example, a lot of the payments that have been made under the SAS program and so on, and HBL is there as one of the leaders in that, has been digital as far as we've been able to make it. Once we have the micro payment gateway up and running, then that too will improve inclusion, both urban and rural. And that hopefully will be the first quarter of next year. So I hope that answers that question. There was a question on the Roshan digital account. And at the moment, yes, there are only actually 8 banks that are up and running on that. And then as a first step, we will be going to a larger number of banks so that the non-resident Pakistanis have a greater option. At the moment, there isn't a plan to actually bring fintechs into it because it is based on a bank account, and it is also, we need to comply with all the compliance standards. However, if a fintech has a proposition, we would be happy to consider it. But as you will understand, the compliance framework, as well as the infrastructure available to service the customer quickly and within 48 hours, we would need the account activated, is required. There was a discussion on the international payment gateway. That is something that I understand the Ministry of Commerce is also working on. But for at the moment, we have given permission, yes, but that permission goes in stages. They get an initial approval, then which means there's a certain capital requirement and all of that, and then it moves to a pilot phase, and then we give full permission. So that's, and I'm sure all of your audience understands the need for those controls. I believe there was a statement on monetary policy, which obviously is understood. I guess the questioner meant that if we can reduce the role of cash in the economy, then obviously our implementation of monetary policy is more effective, and that is certainly understood. And that is the goal. The whole goal of all our initiatives at the State Bank is to reduce the role of cash, and I think everyone here who has spoken shares that, and that is where this whole payments systems that we are coming up with in collaboration with the rest is part of that. I think I have, and the role of trust, of course, and it, I think while it is probably not the something that we would have wanted clearly, but as a result of COVID, and I think all banks and other payment people who use payments have realized that the customer has become far more digitally literate, and therefore has understood that they can use other payment modes and have started to trust them far more. So I think that has improved, and we just need to build on that and build on that confidence. Banks all run their own financial literacy programs, and the State Bank does as well. That's very important. And for example, in the last 2 years, we have put about 1 million people through this to understand why it is important for them to move away from cash. My view on that is eventually it will be the ability to lend digitally, which will be the most important thing, because they can do transactions. Right now, they can make payments, but for the underserved sector to really feel included, they will have to be able to access financial services beyond payments. So they will have to see something. If someone has got an income of 30,000, they are not able to save, they need financing, which comes, so therefore, once we have digital means of lending, and some banks have already worked on it, and we are going to encourage that, that's really where the trust and the value will get built. So we need to get more customer centric and to focus on the needs of the customer. The last one was the cryptocurrency, I believe. Obviously, at this moment, given the security issues, and we do not permit any cryptocurrencies, we are working to see if we are in our plans on innovation. A central bank digital currency is something that we are considering. So I hope that answers all the questions. I don't think I've left anything. If I have, please correct me, Hayat Sahab.
Thank you. No, in fact, that was extremely sequential and very well done. Rajput Saab.
Yeah, I think there was a question about the PKI and its use for facilitating the e-commerce. I will refer to the Electronic Transaction Ordinance, which basically provides the legal framework for e-commerce and electronic transactions in the country. So in its presence, I think we have the robust legal framework available, which will guarantee that the e-payments which are being done for facilitating the e-commerce are secure and done in an enabled environment. Under that ordinance, there is an accreditation agency by the abbreviation of ECAC, which has the authority to do the accreditation for the digital payments or digital signatures. So that arrangement is already available in the system. We are also proposing that there can be a mechanism of escrow account payment services in order to build the trust in the system for the consumers. So the dedicated escrow accounts will ensure that the payments are done on the delivery. And we shall not be restricting ourselves to kind of single platform which is dominated by the government. That will not help in facilitating the scope of the work which is there and the future enhancement in the e-commerce industry which we foresee. So in order to ensure what Mr. Tariq Malik was referring, the government needs to provide the legal framework as well as to regulate it efficiently and not to dominate the system itself, which will not be in the interest of the facilitation of this industry. I have already mentioned about the e-commerce policy. Chapter 4 of that policy is about the consumer protection. I already referred in my talk about the e-commerce codes and alternate dispute resolution mechanisms, which are the features given in this policy, which will enable the system to provide relief to the customers and build their trust. So I think in the presence of that arrangement, we need not give government leeway to dominate the system, which will not be efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. We will go in the sequence. Irfan Wahab Khan Saab, then Ehsan Saya Saab for his closing comments, and then the Ministry of Information Technology has asked me to make that they would want to make a comment. This is the speaker's time, so I will ask them to make a very brief comment. Irfan Wahab Saab.
Thank you, Jay. There's a question on 5G, so I would like to actually start. And just for the benefit of the audience, we need to really understand what the 5G technology is all about. So basically, I mean, in a simpler term, there are two benefits of this technology. One is the extra speed which you can get as a user is much faster than 4G. And the second one is a reduced latency. That means that delay is negligible, is much better compared to the 4G technology. And if you think of the use cases, so latency works in case of, gaming industry, for example, is a big beneficiary of 5G. Similarly, I mean, in terms of the higher bandwidth speeds, it will be specific industries, for example, precision industry, VR, AR, industrial applications, some security applications. So when it comes to the financial system and inclusions, we don't see any immediate benefits of moving into 5G. And we must keep in mind that although, I mean, one day we have to move for the other benefits, but it also requires multi-billion-dollar investments by all players. And we have not fully availed the potential of 4G technology, which is the existing technology. Still, there are parts of country where 4G is not there, and COVID has also exposed that even in the urban areas, the network robustness needs to be even more, needs to be improved. So that means that for a good few years, we need to keep on investing and building a strong, robust 4G network, which will be more than enough to support the financial ecosystem and the digital ecosystem, which generally is needed at this time by virtue of the applications and the usage. And then with time, we will move. The other last element I would like to mention is 5G also requires new handsets. And if you look at, I also mentioned in my comments briefly that even today, we have only reached to 40% of penetration, device penetration when it comes to 4G. That means that we still have a big lag. And in case of 5G, it will take few years before those devices are at affordable rate. They're still a very high-end, expensive devices. And unless it becomes more mass market, a country like Pakistan cannot afford it.
Yes, Sayasa?
Perfect. Thank you very much. So just very quickly, I think what I would really like to focus on is that the e-commerce industry in Pakistan has massive potential, and where that potential really lies in is job creation. And to achieve that growth, every player really focuses very much on customer experience. And digital payments is hence a battle. It's a battle because it really helps customer experience. And for us at Dara, it's a very core battle for us to improve the customer experience as well as the vendor experience. And our mantra has always been that instead of making the user adapt a product or adopt to a product, we are really in the mindset of building a product to address a customer's needs. And hence, we obviously work really to solve both cash on delivery as well as digital payments. However, to achieve the growth in e-commerce and to really be able to get the job creation, it's super crucial for us to be able to get the deeper penetration within digital payments. And we continue to work very closely with all the partners in order to do that. And I'm very confident that we'll continue to see very rapid growth as we have in the last 12 to 18 months in the amount of customers that use digital payments and the amount of transaction value that happens as a result of digital payments.
Thank you. The Ministry of IT has asked to make a comment.
Thank you, Ashraf Saab, for the opportunity. I am representing Secretary IT here, Raza Sukhera from Ministry of IT and Telecom. So I'd like to comment on two things. First is IPG, which is the question was asked about National IT Board, and as National IT Board is under the ambit of Ministry of IT and Telecom, I would like to update audience and especially want to acknowledge what just Deputy Governor Ma'am Seema Kamil has said about it. We have a very good meeting with State Bank team last month, and from Ministry of IT, we have assured them that whatever the pilot or concept, proof of concept NITB will be launching, we would really want State Bank to be on board with us so that a very closely watched and monitored pilot is being done under all the prescribed guidelines of State Bank of Pakistan. So as far as that permission is, which was mentioned in the question, is just a step one. And I think that's a long way down the road. And Ministry of Ministry of Commerce and Ministry, the State Bank, we are really trying to implement it in a very practical way. Secondly, a question was asked about a digital payment system. My apologies about digital signatures. So I would like to highlight some progress recently done in last 2 weeks. Secretary IT chaired a meeting of ECAC where Chairman ECAC was directed to draft a way forward by taking all the stakeholders on board. They have done a couple of sessions with all the stakeholders, including State Bank of Pakistan, so that a practical way forward can be given about digital signatures. And as already apprised by Honorable Additional Secretary, that the ETO 2002 is sufficient enough to let the digital signature be implemented. But we are trying to look into a number of other things. The way we have to go for PKI, and it was also highlighted in the meeting that PKI is the #1 priority in upcoming days, and I think much progress will be shared or can be looked into by the viewers there. So that was a couple of comments on both topics. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure people found that very helpful. Before I go to the chairman, Humayun Akhtar Khan Saab, there's a very persistent raised hand, and that hand was raised after I went to the speakers, but I'd let the person make his or her statement. Dr. Saman, go ahead, please. Very briefly.
Thank you very much. My issue is regarding women, and one of the speakers mentioned rural areas and how they are going to contribute. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so my question is that I heard somebody talk about the rural areas and how they are going to be the driver or the engine of growth in Pakistan. And my question then comes to women in rural areas. We know that women in urban areas of Pakistan are extremely active on e-commerce. Many young women I know are particularly running different businesses of a minor or major scale using e-commerce. But the contribution that the rural women are making to their households, to their communities, they are not being able to come into the loop of the formal economic sector, whether that's like the old systems or the new digitization one. Their husbands are very good at it. I've taken up farming recently, so I'm quite familiar with the rural setup, particularly in Punjab, in northern Punjab, near Muridke. But I realized that even if they're better educated, because women in the villages are better educated because they have restricted mobility, and therefore they concentrate on their education more. And boys, of course, leave education and turn into do other things. So which of the, has the government or any sector looked into how these women who are already contributing quite significantly within the household and their own community, how they can, like their urban counterparts, be drawn into the formal monetary digitization system? I haven't seen any initiatives. I know there are certain social factors that prevent all this. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very useful comment. I'm sorry, I've missed Mr. Mohammed Aurangzeb. For a while, I thought that you may have left the meeting, and I couldn't see your name here. I apologize. Go ahead, sir.
No worries. So I'll be very brief. Just drawing out on what Mr. Wu said and bringing sort of the China into the discussion a little bit in terms of my closing comments. See, from a banking industry perspective, if you look at China, we have the largest banks in the world in China, and 90% of the payment business is outside the banking industry. So I'm not saying we're going to become China tomorrow, but if the banks don't step up and move and accelerate the digital journey, we can move in that direction. That's number one. The flip side of that is we also need to learn from China. That especially as DG Seema was mentioning around the lending and the lending platforms, we don't want to get to a stage like Ant Financial, where the IPO stopped literally 3 days before, and the regulator needs to come in as we welcome the new players into the digital payment services industry, that a level playing field in terms of capital, liquidity, and other measures are brought in. So I just want to mention that China is a good example to look at as we move in our digital journeys here in Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have someone listening in from the China Economic Newsletter, and I hope that she will take that message across. Closing comments from Mr. Humayun Akhtar Khan, CEO and Chairman of Institute for Policy Reforms. So.
A very productive afternoon session, and I'm sorry about Mick Wu, who is getting into the night in Shanghai, but thank you very much, Mick. Yeah, I think, look, I always look at the example of Ireland, which never really industrialized, and from an agriculture country jumped right into high tech. Pakistan, though, is agriculture and has industry too. But as the speakers have mentioned, because of the young population and because of this huge footprint of mobile devices, although smartphones are not as much as Irfan Wahab Saab should like, but we're getting there. I remember when I became a legislator, I mean, the biggest thing that people wanted from us was a sanction for a telephone connection. And now, every servant in the house has a device. So we have come a long way, and just in a few years. And I hope to see that in the e-commerce and payment service industry in Pakistan. I think, as I mentioned, I think I see this as a great source of future growth in Pakistan. Irfan Saab said that they studied that they had a huge impact on the GDP. So that's good news. Second, I think that the technology, because China has made significant strides and has a very close relationship with Pakistan. I think that the Pakistani institutions and private sector should be focusing more on China as a major technology provider, both for hardware and software solutions. I think we have such a long way to go, and China is so advanced in these areas that's something, and that is one reason I requested Mikhu to tell us what's happening there. State Bank, as I said, has taken some excellent steps. For example, things were not really moving in the acquiring business, and with the single move where the State Bank earlier in the year rationalized merchant discount rates and their distribution through the supply chain, has provided the right incentive for the acquiring business to expand, because all they did was they distributed equitably, and the person who is spending money on the POS machine or any other hardware, which is very expensive and capital intensive, is now getting a satisfactory return. My second comment that I mentioned, I'm just trying to reinforce after hearing all of you, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is to look at alternate delivery channels other than the banks and the microfinance banks and EMIs. As the regulator, the State Bank develops confidence. It's just at the start in electronic money institutions. Are areas which should be brought in more and more into the scheme, and that includes cross-border payments, both outward and inward. Outward, Hassan Saab didn't mention, it's the largest e-commerce platform, but I've heard that they still have trouble making payments to merchants outside of Pakistan, and I'm sure that the Deputy Governor would, now that she's in charge of this area, would look into this aspect where cross-border payments outward through non-banking institutions, a certain modus operandi is created. This will be good for growth of e-commerce business in Pakistan, and very importantly, inward cross-border payments, where the remittances, which are amazingly rapidly growing right now, remittances of overseas Pakistanis coming in currently are just allowed through the banking channels. And that's an area, again, the Deputy Governor, I'm sure, would focus on it as to how these alternate delivery channels can be used. And my last point, which I again mentioned, and some of the speakers mentioned, is the pooling of both the government and private sector. The efforts have to be pooled through, I think Daniel from Grant Thornton raised the issue, open loop infrastructure sharing. And right now, we do not see that. I think it's Irfan Wahab, who mentioned that all the institutions who have made some inroads are a bit possessive, and it would be a great help if we all combine the strength of the private sector that, as I said, presently is operating somewhat in isolation. And I really want to thank everybody for a very exciting discussion on a very important topic. Governor Saab has had to go to an ECC meeting. The Deputy Governor, Madam Seema Kamal, the Special Secretary, Rajput Saab, Aurangzeb Sahib, HPL President, Mr. Ahsan Saya Saab, Mr. Irfan Wahab, and of course, last but not the least, Mick Wu of FEOPE. Thank you very much, and hope to see your participation in our events in the future too. Once again, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all. We will end the meeting now. Thank you very much.